Well, welcome to everybody. This is the panel of the intersection of big tech and digital health. So just a quick intro myself, Ignacio Heras, general partner of CRB. So we're a venture capital firm exclusively investing in digital health. And well, a bit of my background. My background in, I was before CEO and founder of startups, so I've been in the other side of the table, so completely far away of the corporates on my journey. So today I'm really excited to know your insights because, for your experiences and before. I would like to say that this is the last minute change. So the moderator was my partner, Alejo Costa. I'm sorry, he's taller, smarter, and handsome than me, but today, I will try to do my best also with this, top-notch panel today. That will ease my life for sure. So let's start with the introductions, if you agree. Today we have Alex Merwin, Head of Growth, Healthcare, and Life Sciences at Amazon Web Services. Thanks for coming. Beatriz Volcaert, Investment Director of Philips Ventures. And last but not least, Rai Oti.
Ahuti.
Oti, thank you. Venture Partner at Four Points Health. So thanks. Probably you can have some short introduction of yourselves and your company, please.
Of course. It's a pleasure to see everybody. Thank you for joining us for the panel today. I'm Alex Merwin, Head of Growth for Health and Bio Startups at AWS, and I have a pretty amazing job of trying to find the highest potential health and bio startups and helping them reduce the time to clinical value by using Amazon Web Services technologies. So I work at Amazon Web Services, not Amazon, so don't talk to me about your delayed Christmas packages. But many people don't know that Amazon is built on a very foundational and primitive and buildable technical infrastructure, which is AWS. So my background is as a core startup operator. I worked at 2 startups before Amazon, both had unicorn exits. And for the last 6 years, I worked at Amazon, trying to help these startups make an impact.
Interesting. Happy to know a bit more later.
Yeah.
Beatriz, please.
Yeah. So, well, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm Beatriz Volcaert, part of the Philips Ventures team, is the corporate venture arm of Philips. So we are mainly investing in medtech and digital health companies that are aligned with the business units that ranges from image-guided therapy to precision diagnosis, monitoring, enterprise informatics, and personal health. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks, Beatriz. Rai.
Hi, everyone. Ahuti Rai. My work broadly falls into 2 categories. So I have an investor hat on, and I work with a few different VCs to invest. And then I also work with companies that are scaling. So they can be healthcare providers, they can be digital health companies, but scaling, basically sort of, growing, scaling commercially, and that's the focus for my work with them.
Thank you. So probably we can start with some general questions like how your company is positioned right now in digital health. We know your different companies, different positions, Amazon Web Services, apart from the packaging that of course everybody knows, and indeed yesterday I had another vote myself, but many companies have using your services at AWS. So how come your company it's positioning in that field?
Great. So when we think about digital health and what it's going to take to introduce these tools and the care pathways actually impact patients, you need to bring together clinical and technology expertise, right? And so people who understand and value the provisioning of care and then enabling them with technology to actually bridge that gap to clinical value. And so we sit firmly on that second side, right? So think about the challenge of we have these new foundation models, which everybody's really excited about. So whether you use Claude or whatever your favorite LLM is, and if you haven't used an LLM, you really should just try it for recipe generation. But if you wanted to use that for, say, patient-clinician interaction summarization, right? 5 years ago, you would have needed a core machine learning team building out a frontier model, spending tons of capital, probably hundreds of millions of dollars of capital. And today, you can, through a single API call to Bedrock, you can access Anthropic, Cohere, Stability AI. AWS just announced a new class of Nova models. And you can get an MVP out the door in weeks, where perhaps it would have taken years before. So, we work in all stages of the health innovation continuum, from drug R&D to frontline healthcare provisioning, but we try to provide those, fungible building blocks to enable innovators to deliver their solutions.
I see. And how AWS is impacting with Gen AI? Because it's huge amounts of data, mostly put it in the cloud. So how it's impacting the business and how position it's more like a longitudinal, like horizontal growth. It's more in the vertical Can you elaborate on this, please?
Yeah, so Amazon Web Services, we've taken a very different approach that's been informed by how our customers build, and it's been focused on giving customers a high degree of optionality. Yep. So which model providers do they want to work with? What features do they need? A high degree of security and compliance so that customers working within a health setting can deploy these applications within their own virtual private clouds where everything is compliant with their own local regulations. And so working backwards from those requirements, we created a set of services that aren't tied to a single foundation model, right? So if you look at what's come out from other leaders in the space, you'll see that they're usually tied to a preferred model provider. And so you might have less flexibility in choosing the right size model for a given use case. Mm-hmm. So that's really how we positioned ourselves and how we approach generative AI.
Interesting, thanks. Beatriz, I would like to understand a bit more on how Philips have transitioned, right? So from a conglomerate generalist company, global, worldwide, then transition to medtech and now health tech. So how this transition is going and how it's positioning in the future, and how do you see as well future in digital health in such a large companies as Philips?
Yeah, so indeed, like we had all these domestic appliances and all this lighting business and so. And yes, we do acquisitions, but we also do divestments of those different lines. Mm-hmm. And then there's some cash, right? So then ventures and those innovations that happen right there in these conferences, and so are the targets that those corporates are looking for. So through investment, through those acquisitions, we transition from this conglomerate to a more equipment-based type of company selling imaging and so on, and now we are transitioning also to providing a full service for hospitals that are our main customers. So we try to provide full service on their care continuum from prevention to diagnosis, treatment, home care, and so. In the last years, there's a bit more of a central role of the enterprise informatics business. This was before under connected care, under the monitoring business, and now it has its own business per se. So not just this, but also the data and AI team before was under the CTO office, under research, and now it's a transversal function across the different businesses and trying to provide those models to the different customers and so.
I see. What are the main challenges then for a company based on hardware, right, to transition to software? I'm sure that there are many challenges that are common for the rest of the companies, Boston Scientific, Abbott, and others. So how do you see that major challenges that your company or Philips are facing?
Well, maybe I'm jumping a bit on another question that might be partnerships, right? But it's so essential. Last week we announced a strong partnership also with AWS, and then this helps us to provide more Gen AI capabilities on top of our customer base, and we have the customer voice, so we tend to have these patients and physicians and hospital insights, and through those strong partnerships where you can really change systematically healthcare in general.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Thanks, Beatriz. Oti, your view is it's privilege, right? You have your experience and the knowledge on the big corporates, but also in the startups. So having been you in this bridge between the two giants versus the Goliaths, how do you see that this position? What are the trends? How do you see that, and how these bridges can be reduced, and this collaboration between big corporates and startups?
Yeah, so that's quite a big question. So I'm gonna try and break it down, because I think big tech plays a number of different roles, right? Whether it's in relation to the startups or the healthcare providers. And I was kind of thinking about the question of our panel today, and I think my short answer is it's critical, right? It's critical that we have big tech in the market, and it's critical that we have the startups in the market as well. So I think that's kind of the short answer. Now, what I see when I do my work with the smaller companies is that they need to be aware, and this is something that in the landscaping work that we do, their competitor analysis tends to focus in a very narrow way often, and they're looking at other startups, right, that are in the same space as them. And it's important to kind of zoom out a little bit and look at the bigger landscape, because we have got the bigger players, and the bigger players have got the dollars and the bandwidth in terms of resources and the expertise to bring something to market really quickly if it's synergistic with their strategy and if it's an opportunity there. And so it's always a case of, well, you know, look at what the big players are doing. One, because directionally that gives you some sense of, you know, where the bigger opportunity is. If the bigger players are moving in a certain direction, then there's a good chance that they have done a huge amount of analysis and due diligence around taking their mammoth companies in that direction. But two, what could they possibly quickly spin out that might then start competing with what you do? Now, on the flip side, you know, there's a positive aspect to all of this, in that the bigger companies are often the potential acquisition partners as well for some of these smaller companies. And we've seen that with One Health and PillPack and, you know, numerous other examples, some successful and some not. So again, with the investor hat on, what I'm also often looking at is, what is the path to exit for this company, and could a corporate like a Philips or a Samsung, or, you know, a big tech player like a Google or an Amazon actually be a potential exit route for this company as well?
Interesting. And now we talk a bit on, you know, how, you know, big corporates, big techs are transforming digital health, but also digital health is transforming the big corporate, right? So the other side around. So happy to understand you as well, how this transformation is transforming your business, your daily basis, routine, and how the company is being prepared for this digital transformation. So probably, well, we continue.
Yeah, I mean, so this is within my experience at Amazon Web Services, this is outside of that. But if we think about Amazon as an employer, right, and, you know, and particularly a very large employer in the U.S., which is an employer-sponsored healthcare system, you know, the trends that are impacting Amazon's business are not different than the trends that are impacting every large corporate employer in America, where one of their largest cost centers now is healthcare delivery. You know, so, you know, if you have an employer-sponsored health plan, like, this is becoming a business risk for any large corporate, because it's just such a cost driver. And so all the trends that we see in terms of aging populations, increased chronic disease burden, you know, increasing costs overall, they impact the commercial innovation of large corporates in America. And so I think that's a great example of a place where digital health can play a role in directly impacting and benefiting big corporate and reducing that cost burden, and most importantly, you know, improving lives for employees more broadly.
Interesting, thanks. Beatriz?
So traditionally, we've been making money basically with equipment, right? So this transition, it's quite challenging internally, right? Because you have like many people, I don't know, like, challenging all these companies, or, you know, like internal innovation. And so, but then like we are hearing the customers that are, you know, like asking for the service. Therefore, well, like, it's a transition, and yet we're still struggling in some some moments, and that's why we need this input from startups and other big tech players that know how to handle data in the best way, and also like with privacy and security, as you were saying.
Interesting as well. How do you see in your view, you know, right, again with this, you know, more holistic view of the ecosystem?
And just to understand the question, is it, sorry, can you repeat this?
Yeah, how digital transformation is transforming the corporates, indeed. So you can, you know, companies can have an interest on digital health, but how digital health is transforming the companies itself. So the digital transformation of the big corporates.
Yeah, I'm going to probably take a slightly different angle on it, if that's okay, because I think sometimes in the middle of the big corporates and the smaller companies are sort of some medium-sized companies who are the providers of healthcare as well. And they're providing an essential infrastructure, right, in terms of the actual delivery of clinical services. And they may be partnering with some of the big corporates, in terms of using some of their infrastructure and their technology. They may also be using some of the specific solutions that plug into certain use cases into the pathways. And I think that's where there's a very critical crunch point, which limits what some of the bigger companies can do and also what some of the smaller companies can do, because it's a layer that kind of sits there that isn't perhaps as apt to change as, in the corporate world, change can also be slow, right? Hopefully I'm not doing anyone a disservice by saying that. But, still, when we look at sort of healthcare providers who are providing clinical services, their ability to kind of change at pace is significantly limited by sometimes, very reasonable factors, but sometimes it's also sort of culture as well.
Right.
And if I think about one of the providers that I'm doing some work for at the moment, and we are scaling their women's health services, it's actually quite tricky for them because we are looking at a number of different solutions that are available from sort of startup scale-ups in the marketplace, but their use cases are quite specific. The evidence that they have generated so far, whilst I kind of applaud the progress, it is for a specific cohort of patients who have a certain set of symptoms, for example. So then that leaves the healthcare provider in a situation to say, well, okay, what about the rest of the patients in this pathway? What can I offer them? Because I'm automatically creating health inequity here by offering a solution that's suitable for certain populations and cohorts, but not for everyone. And I think this is where the bigger players can also come in, though, because the ability to then scale some of those solutions, which at the moment may have only established themselves for certain use cases in certain regions, for certain patient cohorts, with the backup of some of the bigger tech companies, we can actually, and I think this is where more work can be done between big tech and smaller tech. When it comes to sort of that global expansion and that market access, we can then generate sort of more evidence, in more general terms, which then makes it easier for healthcare providers to more universally adopt some of these solutions.
Yeah, interesting indeed. Today, I think, we have representation from big tech, core health tech, and as well, this startup ecosystem, and also the huge conglomerate of health tech. Probably we are missing today the pharma, right? So probably it's one of the other players that used to be in the same table. I've been in the pharma for a while, and always they are thinking, or for probably 10 years or more, that this digital transformation, digital health, but at the end of the day, they're still struggling as well on how to reach that. There are other people or some articles that the next big corporate is going to be a consumer healthcare company. So company probably that it's not still born yet, but to be created. So how do you see that? Who's going to, to beat the pie? What are your thoughts? Just thinking on your vision, you have a unique experience there. So what is your vision? Who's going to beat the big pie of digital health? It's going to be like a corporate, a big tech. It's Amazon, it's the Facebooks, Googles, and others. It's more the medtech or pharma. Or it's a new player.
I think that if we can answer that question, we'd all start a fund together. Actually, that really is the $8 to $9 trillion question when we think about health spend all up. I don't know, but I have some ideas about what the characteristics of that business might look like. I think we have to be open-eyed and honest about some of the bets that have been made in consumer healthcare. So there was a very high-profile business failure within the last few weeks of Forward Health. Forward Health had raised, I believe, $500 million in capital. They shuttered down a year to the day after closing $100 million. They had deployed care pods around the U.S. And the challenge that I had with meeting with members of that business was a lack of empathy for the delivery of care. And there was an attitude and a perspective that that I saw exhibited through the behaviors of somehow some of the members of that team operated, which showed that we need to break this system, that, that healthcare is broken, and we need tech people from Silicon Valley to come in and fix everything. And even when I challenged, some members of this team with that perspective of, because I came from a different sector before getting involved in healthcare, and I meet empathic, driven people in this field that, yes, are subject to a very challenging system, but many of these constraints are there for a very important reason of having a duty of care and fulfilling that promise to the patient and making sure any intervention is safe and efficacious. And, so I think the right approach is going to be more balanced. I do think that innovation needs to be there, but there's a duty of care that needs to be observed. And just as a final anecdote on the Forward saga, go read the letter that Forward sent to their members on the day of business closure. It's in the trade rags. It said, "Dear members, effective today, our website's down, our app is down, all Forward appointments are canceled. FYI, here's an email that you can contact if you have any questions about continuity of care." That is that's completely ignoring the duty of care, right? So it's a way that I don't think it'll work. Sorry, it's a little bit negative. But I do think that some of their ideas were quite transformative about, creating different digitally enabled care pathways, enabling earlier disease diagnosis. So I think it'll be a new company, and I think it'll be a new company that's built on technology provided by big tech, is my prediction.
You're bet there for a new company then. Okay, yeah.
Enabled with big tech technology.
Yeah, good. Yeah. Beatriz, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I would echo what Alex was saying. I think that, so for instance, right, this week there was RSNA, the biggest radiology conference, and in there, of course, now the biggest booths are, yes, healthcare companies, but also tech companies, right? You can see year by year how this is growing. I think that, yes, big partnerships and of course, the companies that can figure out a way to be, aligned with this might be the ones playing. I feel like you always need the companies that are close to the customers. Otherwise, you lose this customer voice. But also, of course, you need this top-notch tech that the companies can provide.
I see. So then your bet goes to?
For now, partnerships.
Partnerships as well.
Between
the big techs.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
big corporate, but could be like Philips together.
Yeah,
with
the ones that
Amazon.
have already the channels, plus the companies that already have the tech.
I see. Yeah, interesting. Thanks, Beatriz, for the insights. Okay.
Or rather conveniently, I think it's a blend of the two
Okay.
answers. And I think it will be a new company that's a spin-out. And it will be a completely separate subsidy from some existing corporates and companies.
Yeah.
Okay, so blended. So we have one company, so a collaboration and as well a blended. Yeah, it makes sense.
What do we get if we win?
Excuse me again?
What do we get if we win the prediction?
I don't know. I will intend just for the
free tickets to Health Tech.
Free tickets,
next
Health Tech.
year.
Yeah, we can ask to the organization if that could be possible. I'm sure that will, and I will think that. Yeah, I will put it down probably after the panel. Probably we have 5 minutes left. If there is any questions on the audience, happy to bring the mic over there. Otherwise, we'll continue with more questions. People is waiting for lunch probably. So then I continue there. Interesting. So I would like to have a bit more on your thoughts on some strategies. Some companies, as Philips has their own corporate VC, also Amazon have a ventures. So I'd like to understand some benchmark, some different programs that you have already in terms of develop further the innovation in digital healthcare inside your company, or together with some sort of open innovation with others?
Sure. I mean, it's very exciting to talk about some of the programming that we offer for innovators and helping them really accelerate their startup journey. So the first is any builders that are in the room, please go to startups.aws.com. We have a credit investment program called Activate. Founders can get access to credits right now. They can use that to provision an AWS account. They can go start building in a matter of 10 to 15 minutes. So these Lego blocks that I'm referring to, I mean, go play with them. I mean, it's really that easy. There's a broad slate of programming available through startups.aws.com. We run a series of accelerators. We just wrapped up a generative AI accelerator that did feature some very exciting companies from the health space. One focused more on drug R&D. We've talked more about the commercial side of pharma today, but I think that a lot of the future innovation, like we're going to see an amazing class of new therapeutics and diagnostics coming out of early stage R&D pipelines. And then it's just about engaging with our team. So we have a broad bench of specialists within health and life sciences. We can help anybody working, again, from early stage drug R&D through to translational science, clinical development, and frontline healthcare delivery. And for anybody who wants to learn more, just find me after the talk. Would love to speak more.
Sure, great. Who leads those type of programs? So who's inside the AWS? Who's leading this? Is it like the innovation department? It's from the headquarters, so it's more like a delocalized programs?
Well, so Amazon Web Services is very big, of course. So we have a devolved model. We have different teams and regions that cover startups. We have a global startup organization, and we have different breakouts within the business for covering provider orgs, pharma, med device, so on and so forth. But yeah, no, for any builders, I'm your person, and then I work very closely with our other industry teams as well that cover large corporates.
Interesting. Thanks for sharing.
Sure.
Beatriz, your thoughts on that? You had at the past, I remember Philips HealthWorks. You have been collaborating with many companies in the last years. So happy to have your insights there.
Yeah. Thanks. Currently, it's not as structured as as Amazon. Before we had an accelerator program. Now it's more on each of the business. So they have like their programs, and therefore, like for instance, like 2 panels ago, like there was Emily from the Moderator childcare department, and then like they do initiatives with the different countries depending on different initiatives, European projects, and so. And they try to engage early in the days with the companies in order to tackle some of the challenges. Then like the ventures team sits in innovation and strategy, and at the end it's kind of like pipeline for M&A that sits on the finance function. And then like through those partnerships, European and other consortiums, plus ventures, plus M&A, we try to partner as much as possible with companies.
What then would be probably the flagship one? Do you think that it's a corporate VC, or it's more than which ones do you think that it has more weight in the Philips?
I would say partnerships. At the end, like each of the business units, they have their, I would say, like top 10, top 15 companies that they track over time. Is a long-term relationship, and on the ones that they like the most, or the ones that they see that this can change their business on the long run, then they invest, and they are like a target for an acquisition, right? So I would say, from a partnership perspective, they see way more, and sometimes it's not needed, right, to invest in a company if you can have like a strong partnership on this end.
Absolutely. Well, startups then they wanted your money, but it's fair that sometimes collaborations it makes more sense for that sense. Thanks. What are your thoughts? You have like probably some programs that you feel that are again the most popular ones, or the ones that some recommendations for the audience as well that are listening us. Probably some that you think that are really rocket and to have some inspiration.
Yeah. So I think we're in a good place. There are so many programs available now to startups, and I think back to sort of 5-6 years ago, and I could probably sit here and talk about the top 5 that everyone should think about, and it's not the case anymore. There really are a huge number of programs. Investors are now also setting up their own kind of accelerator or immersion programs. You've got the corporates that do it. You've kind of got the innovation agencies in the different countries that do it. So I guess I'm not going to sit here and kind of recommend certain programs, but what I will say is with that amount of choice, I think it's important to carefully consider which ones you do go for, because I think there can now be more strategic alignment for the startup to think about which of these programs should I put some time and energy into. And I see enough startups that are enthusiastic, they apply, they get a position, which isn't as competitive nowadays as it used to be 6 years ago. But then they don't have the time, they don't have the capacity to participate fully. And that's a real waste. It's a waste of the opportunity in of itself. So I think we're now in a place where even startups can be a little bit more strategic about which of these opportunities and programs they apply to. You know, does the company running it, for example, does it provide some kind of expertise that some of the other programs don't? You know, is there sort of some context, you know, if it's a corporate program, if it's Philips or Samsung or someone else running it, for example, does that strategically align with the nature of the solution that they're developing? You know, it's that kind of thinking as opposed to just applying to any. And of course, some of these programs offer money as well, but then there are often some tie-ins with that. And you know, all of these things are important to consider. I think one of the areas where a lot of the big tech and corporates can really help, and they can help startups, but they can also help governments, is really in that space of regulation. And I know regulation's been talked about a lot over the 2 days, and this isn't a panel that's talking about regulation, but I think this is a space where it's incredibly confusing, is expensive to make mistakes in this space, and I think this is an area where all of the programs really need to have a huge spotlight to help navigate the regulatory systems, but then also big tech in particular can work with governments to help inform their regulatory policies. The number of unregulated AI products that are out there on the market is quite scary, and so I think there's a lot that still needs to be done in this space too.
Thanks, Lottie. We're running out of time, so I would like to thank you very much.